Good morning, YouTube. Well, good morning coming from me. It's about 6, and I'm just relaxing, listening to the waves. We have a lot of clouds today, but it's still nice. There's no rain, so I'm happy about that. I can continue on with this video. So, what am I gonna dig into today? What am I gonna talk about? In this video, I'm going to talk about consciousness. And I plan to talk about this type of thing quite a bit more off into the future. And I'm going to hit it from as many different angles as I think is necessary. And I'm going to avoid talking about the same thing in the same way, you know, to keep it interesting and also to really help us put our thinking caps on. So how am I going to lay this video out? In the first part, I'm going to talk about our collective consciousness. The consciousness that all of us share. The part of us, the awareness and the thinking that we all do together. No learning needed, really. And next, from there, I'll talk about consciousness, whether or not it survives the demise of our body. And I'm gonna go into things related to that. And lastly, I'm going to talk about how our consciousness is entangled with the consciousnesses of others. And I'm talking like another person or a small group of people. How consciousnesses entangled. And, you know, give my thoughts on these things and hopefully hear yours too. So let's get started. Collective consciousness. What exactly is it? Collective consciousness is the consciousness that we share with the rest of the world. Like some things don't have to be taught. Like you can take a group of people and even other animals to a degree, and you could keep them separated from one another and teach one group and don't teach the other group. But if you bring them all back together, they're all gonna share a common knowledge that didn't need to be taught. They're gonna have a type of instinct. I guess you can call it instinct. But I think it goes deeper than instinct. It's basically an ingrained, innate education. And I guess some historical examples of this. One is the creation of pyramids. Pyramids are not just in one place. They're, from what I've learned, all over the world. And pyramids were built around the same time period. Well, actually, a lot of them are hundreds of years apart. But the fact that they're separated from one another, back in those ancient times where communication was not possible amongst respective parts of the world, they didn't have they didn't have the ability to communicate with one another. So how are they able to get this information? How are they able to know to do this? I guess a bigger question is even why. I think the only reasonable explanation, well, not the only, I mean, we could take this in many different directions, but I think one very good explanation is our collective consciousness. Like, they were able to tap into this collective consciousness and get this information and create something that's the same thing independently of another group that's very far away, that these groups of people never ever had any exposure to. And even with tools is the same thing. Tools found in history. There are many of the same tools all over the world in different places. And the cultures and groups of people that have the tools never had any exposure to other groups of people that have the same types of tools. And even today, we have collective consciousness today. And an example of that is the internet, where we can share all of our ideas with one another and keep the world up to date with everything that's going on, like keep the world just tied together. But I think that those ancient cultures and civilizations, they had something better than the internet. They had an innate ability, this collective consciousness. They were really tapped into it deeply. And I think that tools like the internet separate us from this type of thing. So it is a form of, it's technology used as a form of collective consciousness, but it's making us lazy and distracting us from our true innate ability. So that's collective consciousness, my thoughts on it. And let's go to the next thing. Does consciousness survive the demise of our bodies? Basically, it means after we die, do we live on through spirit, a ghost? Does something else survive an actual physical death? Does our consciousness or whatever is inside of us, our awareness, survive a true physical death? Well, I've done quite a bit of reading and found lots of anecdotal stories and accounts of people being pronounced medically dead, clinically deceased. But they were lucky enough to come back. And after they came back, they were able to give accounts of what was going on during the time where they were supposedly dead. And there's lots of accounts like this. And, you know, anecdotal, of course, and I guess you gotta take that for what it's worth. But, you know, still quite compelling in some cases. You know, we can't disregard everything. We have to listen to each other, because our biggest resource is one another. And even with that, with consciousness surviving the body, our bodies, even if the body dies, like if you think about something like meditation. Meditation is a type of separating your consciousness from your actual physical body. And why do people meditate? They say peace of mind, or, you know, to find answers, and, you know, they give all of these you know, vague descriptions. Not vague, but you know, there's different reasons given depending on who you ask in regards to what meditation actually is and what it does. But a very common answer to what meditation is, when asked about it, is, you know, a response that people give is that you meditate, you're supposed to meditate by, you know, calming your body and just observing it and letting it be as it is and observing it for what it is. Basically a type of separation. And they say you're studying yourself, kinda, separately from yourself. And I think that is one way of doing meditation. But another reason for doing meditation that isn't really commonly thought about is when you separate your consciousness from your body, you have access. You're released from restrictions. Being in this body carries restrictions. And you're released from a lot of those restrictions when you meditate. And when you're relieved of these restrictions, you have access to an infinite wealth of information, other worlds, experiences, and who knows what else. And an example of what I'm getting at here is like tapping into the Akashic Records. I've done quite a few videos on the Akashic Records. If you don't really know what it is, or you're interested and you want to know more, I'll drop some links below. So, you know, check that out if you want to. But with the Akashic Records, it's kind of like you're tapping deep into your subconscious and even the collective conscious into a point where information is infinite. Like all of the recorded experiences that you've had in your life, in this life, in a previous life. and in someone else's life, and even their previous lives. You get access to that information. And, you know, infinite information is valuable. There's so much you can do with that if you know what to do with it. So, with like opening the Akashic Records, you're separating yourself and relieving yourself of the restrictions of your physical body and looking over into another world, so to speak. And you bring it back to this body and hopefully use the experiences, hopefully use not the experience, but use the information that you got when you left your body, so to speak. And even some people like to take mind-altering substances to help them tap into or tap out of this body and all the restrictions that it holds. When I first heard and learned about people using psychedelic drugs or whatever type of drugs that they use to see outside of this body and I guess become better spiritually, I didn't really buy it. I kind of took it just as a reason to do drugs, but I have had experiences where I was deep into mind-altering things like alcohol, and I'm very aware of how it separates you from your body. And during those times, you are in really deep introspection. You're looking really deep inside, seeing parts of yourself that you never really pay attention to or knew that existed there. And you learn something about yourself. You remove all the restrictions that reside in this physical body. And you feel really free when you do it. It's liberating. But I think that doing it manually through things like meditation is the way, because when you alter your body and do things to your body, there's still consequences that come with that. And this body has to take you through the rest of your life. So we have to preserve it. And sometimes the easiest way isn't the best way. And also, altering your biochemistry and altering your mind with drugs is really tricky. I don't think we're smart enough to really do that yet safely. I mean, we think we are, but I don't think we are. So, yeah, next thing. When our consciousnesses entangle, yeah, our consciousnesses entangle. And entanglement is from quantum physics. It's a concept from quantum physics where they say two particles, two things within the same system, once they come in contact with one another, they are forever linked. What one does affects the other. They're never, ever apart, ever. It's like a forever connection. And whether this can apply to us, creatures like us, humans, I'm not sure. But let's talk about that anyway. And let's make some comparisons. I think the best comparison to make is us coming from our parents. You know, at one point we were part of our father. And at another point, we were a part of our mothers. And even after we left our mother, we were nurtured by her. And a strong emotional connection was built. And thereafter, we maintained a intellectual connection with our parents. And some of us feel and think and even know that we're connected with our parents on a very deep level, like to the point of telepathy. Like they know when we're feeling something in a deep way, and we know when they have some deep emotional state going on, because we can feel it, because of how entangled we are with one another. And of course, this type of thing can fade with time and even resonate at other times when we're going through the same type of thing that one of us experienced at one time or another, whether it's at the same time or different points in time. And even friends, there's a type of entanglement that we do with our friends. And to a great degree, that's based on our experiences with one another, our memories that we had with one another, things like this. And those things never go away. They keep us together, no matter how far apart and no matter how much time passes by. It keeps us together. And significant other, a lover, your partner in life, a significant other is very different from the previous two relationships that I just talked about, in that there's a physical connection. You actually share bodies, kind of like the parent-child, but in a different way, of course. You share emotional bonds, like you pour your emotions into one another. You absorb one another's emotions and feelings and deep thoughts, deep wishes, deep desires. And of course, you talk to one another. You do lots of communicating. That is if your relationship is healthy enough for that or requires communication. Some relationships, relationships are different. Some people need lots of physical attention. Some people need lots of emotional attention. Some people need lots of intellectual attention. It all varies. But I think with that type of relationship, you have so many parts of you becoming entangled all at one time that it's really easy to develop like a telepathic or strong bond to the point of being psychic and knowing what the person is doing and what they're feeling at the time when they're feeling it. And one situation that happened to me that made me realize that, like what I just said about this, about a significant other and connecting with them. I was flipping through social media one day, and I ran across a comedian, and the title of the video before I clicked on it was something like, "I know what my ex is doing, and they know what I'm doing." And I clicked on it, and it wasn't what I expected it to be. The comedian began talking about the fact that they had so much sex and they did so many things together. There's no way that you don't have my genetics, my DNA. And of course, she said it way different from the way that I'm putting it out now. I don't really remember it. But as I was listening to it, I felt like she was reading my mind, like word for word. I was like, whoa, I can't believe someone else has thought this before. I thought I was the only one, because I never shared that with anyone before. Collective consciousness, could it be? But I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, I'll wrap this up. And this is my first video about consciousness, and I'm going to talk about existence and things all tied to this in the future, and of course coming from different angles to make it interesting and thought-provoking, and something to build on in the future. Hopefully we take this somewhere where it has never been before, but we got to start with the basics first. So I thank you for watching. I appreciate you. I love you. I enjoy your presence, and I hope you enjoy mine. I hope you have a wonderful, beautiful day. Bless you. And take it easy. I'm gone.